I was just about ready to give up on this crank bolt. Let me tell you what, this is probably one of the hardest crank bolts I've ever had to break loose on a vehicle. This little 3.3, boy, I tell you what, it fought me to the end. I almost gave up. There is my breaker bar and a very, well, short piece of pipe, but it turns out to be pretty long. Now what I had to do, there's really no options here of really holding that crank pulley, as you can see right there. I've got a couple pair of vice grips. I really couldn't get the vice grips to work up here very well, so what I had to do, let me go underneath here real quick and show you. There is a shield that goes right here. There it is, it's laying right there, easy to take off. I was able to actually get my vice grips on here much better. I kind of gripped the outside of that pulley, and when I spun it a little bit, I'm going to have to get back up on the top here real quick for you guys. When I spun it around, I was able to let the pulley turn a little bit until it stopped right about there. You see the vice grips, it kind of hit that bracket. You'll have to use two pairs because it takes every bit of strength I had to break that loose, and I actually got to break loose. So that had me really worried. Let me set the camera up here real quick and let you watch me break this. Take it off the rest of the way. Alright, I think you can kind of see that there. So, and the socket that I am using here, it is a 1 1/16. This is a 12 point. I really needed the 6 point. I didn't have one, so I had to go with this, but it did work. So go ahead and pull this, turn this rest of the way off. Heck, I don't know, it might come out with my hand now. I don't know, see. Alright, yep. Pretty long bolt. I even put this belt back on, hoping to put a block of wood in here to help me keep from turning this pulley, but it didn't work either. So I had to reestablish what I was doing. I had vice grips down here before on the bottom, right there, but they weren't very tight. I couldn't get them very tight from up here. I had to lay on the bottom where I could get a really good grip. And looks like it's ready to come out now. Let me set the camera up here just a little bit better. Alright, we'll finish taking this out. This is very important. You might want to try and break this loose with all the belts still on and some vice grips on the back of that pulley there. It might help you. Those extra belts, if you leave them on, they may actually give you a little resistance, and maybe you can stick a piece of wood in here. But there's really no other options to break this bolt loose until you do it this way. And you can see just how long this bolt is. Very long bolt. Like I said, it took every bit of strength I had, and I am not exaggerating, so just beware, okay? Alright, so that's a big release, and I will go ahead and take this stuff back off that I put on here. And there's the bracket. I just kind of put that back on just to put a belt on here to help me hold that pulley down there. So I'll just take all that back off, and we'll continue here. I was going to use this electric impact tool here for the socket, but the problem was there just was not enough room. And then there is the pulley, and you can see what was stopping me here was this air conditioner condenser. There just wasn't enough room to get that tool in there, so this was my only option in breaking that big bolt loose on that crank pulley. Okay, now as for the pulley, surprisingly it was pretty easy to get off, which was kind of interesting. I just used my big old pair of clamps there. I've got a box here that has different sizes. What I wanted to say was 3-jaw puller set, and I think I picked these up at Harbor Freight. I got a really good deal on them. So surprisingly, that has come off. So it's already ready to come off. So good news there. Made up for the extremely difficult bolt to get out, I guess. Alright, so we've just about got this off, just with a simple wrench here and thumb wrench, and let's see, it's just about off. So actually I probably should turn it the right way. Alright. Alright, so we're just about already got that off. Now I pulled the big bolt out and I put just a small little extension in there just to help me the rest of the way. And we'll go ahead and take it off. And like I said, surprisingly, this has come off easy. I think it's just about off. There we go. Alright, so and there it is. Alright. You see the vice grips? Everything's still attached. And here's basically what I used. Just an extension to help me out when I ran out of bolt. And there it is. Now, some people can put bolts here and tap that and get a wheel puller and pull this off, but not on this vehicle. If you live in the Northeast, you know what I'm talking about. Although I do see some threads in there, but you could try it. But this thing is really rusted. But there was my vice grips, how I kind of gripped it there. So thank goodness this thing is out. That is a big relief. Alright, so what we're going to do next is go ahead and get this air conditioning pump out of the way. There's a bolt here that actually is connected to your dipstick here. Like I said, these tools are great, these little ratchets, because you can't get a socket in here. We'll go ahead and get this out of the way. We are going to unhook these two lines here. Mine doesn't have any pressure in it because it does leak right here. He said this hose had a leak in the bottom of it, so we're going to have to replace it eventually. And we got a bolt here, and we got one on the bottom down there. It shouldn't be too bad to take off, but I think what we're going to do is take the pump off and get the bracket off next. Alright, so we're ready to take this air conditioner off the pump. And on the bottom, the air conditioner on the bottom, these are these two long bolts you see here. They were kind of difficult to get out because you can see all the corrosion on them. These are all 12mm bolts. The only bolt was different was the two up here on the top of this that holds the air conditioning lines on. Those were 10, and we're ready to take this off, and we'll take out our last bolt here. Of course, I'll have to get the ratchet. Now this here is a 14. And we basically have to take this pump off because we got to get that bracket off. There are the shorter ones on the bottom. The top ones are the longer ones. Sorry about that. And here are the short ones that go on the bottom. So I had to take a screwdriver and knock this one out from the behind because it just wouldn't come out. So we got that out. And you can see we've got all our bolts labeled and everything, so I know exactly where they go. Alright, so in order to get this bracket here off, it's a little complicated. There are a lot of bolts in the side here. If I can get the camera just right. There are probably 6. There is a couple on the very bottom here that are hidden. Once I pull this bracket off here shortly, I'll show you. But here are the bolts, and you will probably have to label some of these because some of these are a little bit longer. For instance, we got 2 right here, and you can see this one is just slightly longer than the other. It's actually the bottom bracket, and also the alternator is in the way. You got a couple of bolts you got to take out there. Here's the alternator. I just kind of left it down there. The front bolt right here is easy to get to, but this back bolt back here, which is a smaller bolt like this, you actually have to get one of these guys here and move this wiring harness. Just kind of push it out of the way a little bit, back off out of the way. And when you do that, you can actually get behind here on this alternator. Let me zoom in a little bit. Right there, and there's a bolt in the back. Very tight to get in there, but once you get this bolt out, then the alternator will swing out kind of like this. Then that will leave the bottom bracket bolt right here, which bolts right here where my finger is on the front of the block. pop it off, and this whole bracket piece here, you see swaying right here, will free up, and this will let the whole alternator just kind of sit down or out of the way. Now, once you get all the bolts here out of this bracket, it's loose, see? But you still can't take it off. So I'll probably jump a step ahead. There is a little 8mm bolt that's holding it in right about there. Once I take this cover off on the timing belt, I'll be able to go ahead and take that off. So I'm going to go ahead and take this timing belt cover off, then I'll pull that bracket out of there. So just so you know, don't beat yourself up over it. There are a lot of bolts in there that are hidden. And the best thing to do is just stick your finger in there and you feel a bolt, just take it off. And most of these bolts, let me see, what size are they? Like about all these bolts are 14. Yeah, 14mm. So, except for the smaller ones here, and these are actually 10. So, other than that, we'll go ahead and start pulling this front cover off, and we're kind of getting down to the bottom here. Alright, so as I was taking these bolts out here, the one that I was telling you about with this bracket, I took it out, and it's just one of these little guys here. This bracket fell right out. And this sucker is heavy. Oh my goodness. Oh. Let's look at it. Get a good look at it. Let me get my light. I know there's some hardcore Xterra fans out there that are going to be rebuilding their engine, but you can see there are the 3 on the bottom, the bolts. As we move up to the top, you got 4, 5, 6, and a little one there for the oil dipstick. But what a complex bracket. And your alternator bolts right here on the front. And here is the one on the back that I was telling you about that's really tough to get into, but thank goodness it's a small bolt. And here's another bolt there that I just kind of stuck in there, and that is actually for a ground wire that goes to the fender, which is right there. You can kind of see it. Comes up and right there. So that's out, and all we got to do now is go ahead and pop this dust cover off for our timing belt. I'm kind of curious to see what this timing belt looks like. May have to replace it, I don't know. And let's see, I think we got them all. There's always one hidden somewhere. It's actually down here on the bottom. Right there. Get this out of here. Of course, it's got to be something fancy. There we go. Alright, there's that one. And now, still got a couple more here in the center. Alright, there's another long one. I like to put a little paint on them so I can mark them, you know, just so I know where they're going. Trust me, it'll help you out a lot. A little bit of paint. So there's that one. And we got a couple more here. Short one. One on top here. And we got one more right here. And a little one. Something right there, God damn it. Another one, smaller one. And a bolt right there I gotta get. And I do believe that is it. Pop this off. Obviously it comes off in 2 pieces. There's that piece, and we'll grab the other one that fell on the floor. And here it is, the dust cover. So looks like it's in pretty good shape considering how old it is. So let's go ahead and look at that belt now. Let's take a look at it, and it looks like the belt's in really good shape. Someone's replaced this belt not long ago, it looks like. You can see it's not even dry rotted or anything. And I can tell someone's worked on it because there's a timing mark, someone's painted there. And on this side also, so no big deal. And there's a timing mark on the top of the belt. So what I'm going to do next is go ahead and put this in time. Put the rotor button on number 1 here on the distributor and get the timing marks lined up. And we'll go ahead and slip this belt off, and we'll go ahead and pull this distributor out of here. So, so far, hasn't been too bad. If there's a look at it on the bottom. And there's a timing mark there on the crank. So, a lot of tutorials online about this engine. A lot of people like working on this engine, I guess. So, all right, so far so good. But just have a little patience, like I said earlier, with this bracket right here for that air conditioning. That thing had me stumped there, and you can see the complexity here of how it bolts on the side of the engine and everything. There we go. Well, the light's not working the best, but you get the idea. And there is the oil light sending gauge. There's the oil filter and pump. And there's the manifold. And the other thing I'm worried about is getting this dust cover off of the manifold so I can actually get those manifold bolts off. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. But anyway, I'm going to get this belt off here. Time it up. Alright, so moving right along here, we do have our timing belt off. Pretty easy to take off. Now what I did, and you can probably do the same thing, go ahead and break your cam bolts loose now while the belt's on there, because you can take that big ratchet and kind of hold this crankshaft, and these will break loose and slip it off. And I'm not going to worry about the timing too much right now, but you can see I still have timing marks on my belt, which is great. And there are a lot of information online on how to retime your vehicle back up. So we'll put this off to the side. And also, I do have a bit of good news, I guess. I was worried about this exhaust down here, and if you look closely, if I can get the light kind of situated, the problem I was having was this heat shield. You can see how it's kind of set in there. Well, I actually got two of the bolts out up front, which were pretty easy to get. There's one in the far back that I could not get, so I decided to go ahead and just kind of bend this up a little bit. And when I did, lo and behold, if you look right there, check this out. You can see my three manifold bolts. One there, one down there, and one on the very bottom there, but you can't see it. But they're all easy to access. I was surprised. So I got some WD-40, sprayed on them. I took my little heating torch, which is right there, my little tiny thing, you know. I think everybody has one of those. Put some heat on it, and would you believe I got all three of them off. So this was a big relief. I think I will do the same thing with the other side also. And if I can get this heat shield off on this side, bend it back, I'll do the same thing. But first, I've got to take this power steering pump off. And that's probably what we're going to go ahead and do next, is get this power steering pump off. It's kind of tight there. And also, I'm taking my hood right there, you see the little support. I'm kind of flipping back and forth, so I'm going to put that on this side. And we'll start working on this power steering. So we're getting down there, starting to look like an engine block. We ain't got too much more to do here, but I'm so relieved. And one other thing I noticed, and maybe you can see this, if I set the camera up, what do you see right there? Yeah, baby, that's a crack. So it looks like I'm going to have to replace both these manifolds. I seen them online brand new, or practically brand new, for about 40 bucks. So the funny thing is, the passenger side over here is the one that had the leak. I could hear it, but this side was quiet. But I do see a crack there, so I'm not going to take any chances. I'm just going to go ahead and order one for it, I guess. So let's go ahead and get this power steering unit off. As for the power steering unit, go ahead and unhook your hose here from the reservoir. There's a tube that goes down to here, a little short piece. And you got two bolts back here for this ground, and another ground strap right here. I just went ahead and put the screws back in there. There's one there, and there's one on top here. Get those out of the way, and of course you got your main power steering line here. Just break this loose. This is a 1-inch socket. I put the bolt back in it, and you can see the hose is actually right there. You'll lose a little bit of fluid, so I have a pan under there. And the only two bolts holding this in, you have to put your socket in here. There are 14mm bolts. One's right here. It's got a bracket on the back of it, and it kind of sits in here like this and through right about there. So once you get this loose, you might want to put your finger back there, try to hold this. It'll probably fall on the floor. It just fell on the floor like it did on me. Just pick it up, and this is a 14, and this here is actually a 13, I believe. Actually, this is a 12. So this is a 14, and this is a 12mm bolt. And this is the small bolt that goes right here. And other than that, the power steering unit's ready to come out. And you can see I've already moved it. If I put my screwdriver here, you can see it's kind of moving a little bit there. So I need to set the camera down and go ahead and pull that out. And of course I lied, there's actually one more little bolt right here in this piece there. So you can see it's ready to come out. Well, if I can get this out with one hand, and you can see the other bolt kind of hanging up right there. I think I can slide that out real quick. We have to put the camera down. Oh, okay, maybe I can get it. There we go. Okay, there's our power steering unit. Interesting little thing. And let's see what I dropped. Just that big bolt. So that is out. And here is the secondary bolt. So these are identical here. The 212s and a 14. And we can put this off to the side. So there you go. And let me give you a look at the bracket right there. And this is what we're going to take out next. Get this thing out of the way. Doesn't look too bad. Alright, so out comes our bracket. And I'll tell you one thing. Nissan loves their brackets. Man, what a design. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 bolts. 3 of these are the same. And you have one slightly bigger one that goes right about there. So that's out, which wasn't too bad. Now you can see we have a lot more room here freed up, and now we can actually get in here and start doing some other things. So that wasn't too bad there. I'm glad we got that out of the way. Now we can start taking some of this other stuff off. Alright, so these are off. I put an L on this, so I just kind of keep them the same, you know, when I put them back on. Alright, let's go ahead and get our inner dust cover off, and I've already got the bolts out, and they're real easy to take out. There they are in a bag, labeled, and I made little white marks on here so I know exactly where they go. And this makes life a lot easier. So get this out of the way. Well, good news, kiddos. There are the manifold bolts. There's one on the bottom there you can't see, but that looks like I'll be able to get into there and get those. Now this heat shield that goes over it, I basically just, there was one bolt on the front here, the small bolt. I couldn't get off, it was rusted, so basically it sits down like this, and I just took my grinder, which is right there. I was able to get this one, but there's one down here on the bottom, it's a little lower. I got it there and got in there and kind of cut it down a little bit, but it was just enough to pop this off. I still think I can probably reuse this, but pull it back like this out of the way, and this will expose your manifold bolts. Now look closely. What do you see over here? Look at that. All those cracks. This is where my exhaust leak was on this side, so this manifold is trashed. So now we're going to go ahead and grease these bolts up and put a little heat on them, and go ahead and break these off. So this is a big relief, knowing that I can get these heads off now without working too much. And if you look closely, you can probably see one of the bolts I tried to cut off in the manifold. There's one there for the heat shield, and there's one, I think you can see this one right there, kind of sticking out what's left of it. So that's good. So we got the power steering unit out of the way, got all these little hoses and stuff pushed back out of the way, took lots of pictures. And now I'll go ahead. Now if you're using a grinding tool, be careful, you got a transmission line right here. I'll get pretty close to it. See if I can get these bolts out. Alright, good news. I've got them all broken loose. I'm on my last one here, the third one, and I already got, you can probably see some of the smoke. I've got my torch on it, I heated it up. See if we can get this one broke loose. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. Alright, I don't believe it, I got all 3 of them, so this is wonderful. There's this one here, it's already loose. So I think these are probably stainless steel nuts, which really makes a difference. And the bottom is on the bottom here. Of course the bottom is on the bottom. I think you can kind of see it there. Let's see, there it is. Right on the bottom, right there. So looks like we won this battle. So that's great. So we'll go ahead and get these bolts out of here, and then we'll start working on these heads and getting the rest of this stuff off. Alright, so we'll go ahead and take our upper water jacket off here. 2 bolts holds it on, and I'm surprised we don't have another thermostat there, although we have one on the bottom. But there it is, and there's the 2 bolts. These are 12 millimeters. Pretty straightforward. Just loosen this clamp up right there. That goes right there, and that way you should be able to get this off without damaging anything. So pretty cool there. And now we'll go ahead and get our distributor here off. This is a 12 millimeter nut and bolt. And I'll take this off. Should be able to just pull this straight up. There we go. Get this out of the way. And now we got a lot of room here to work around now. Okay, so we're doing pretty good. We got all of our injector bolts out, and they are a 6mm. So make sure you have one of these guys, hex on standby, and here are the bolts. Now there are 2 little washers. Make sure you keep those together. I use a magnet, just kind of stick it down close to the bolt when it's ready to come out. And it'll catch everything, and I've got everything in my little bag here. And you can see this is ready to come out. So I think I can probably hold the camera and do this with one hand. Let's see. That would be wonderful. Yes, sir, I sure can. So we got this out. That's wonderful. So we'll go ahead and put this off the side. And like I said, my car, this thing runs great. I just had the head gasket problem, but all the injectors are pretty good. But I'll clean it up later. But there's all the bolts. We'll put all this together, and that way we can find it later. And also, don't forget, you got these little injector seals that sit on these bolts. Don't forget those. I almost forgot those. So make sure you have those in the bag also. Alright kiddos, here we go. I spent a whole hour trying to get this intake off without breaking it, and I succeeded. But only thing that I had to worry about in the far back, and why is it always the bolts in the back where you can't reach them, always give you trouble. That one snapped off. Everything else came off. Here's what's left of it. And as you can see, they're supposed to look like this. So I was worried that I would not get this intake off because that bolt goes down into this head. But what I did, I lubed it up, I drilled it out a little bit, put some WD-40 in there, I kind of heated it up, tapped it, got everything here kind of worked loose, and I got to a point where I can put a little pry bar up under here like this. I'm going to explain this the best way I can because I don't know if that's a common issue with that bolt back there getting hung up. But I just kind of pried on this and kind of moved this like this a little bit, and freed everything up as much as I could. Then eventually, when I got this to move enough, I put a screwdriver down here between this lip, and as I was pushing back down on this, I took a board like this and a hammer, and I tapped this. The whole idea is try to lift this back end up over that bolt that's broke off, and it actually worked. It took a while. Took a little bit of patience, but it came off. And let me show you here real quick. And there is one hose here you have to slide off and unhook, which is right there. And look at all the squirrel nuts. Yeah. So here is the side that I had problems with right here. But if you look on the bottom, I did okay. I didn't damage it, and I can still reuse this intake. So the bolt is still actually here, and you can see it's supposed to look like this. Actually, it's supposed to look like this, but the top of it broke off because it twisted off. I couldn't get it off no matter what I did. So I'll get that out eventually. Worry about it when I get the heads off. But man, that was the only thing I was worried about. So we don't have much more here to do to pull these heads off. Just take the valve covers off and the camshafts, and we're ready to go. So, but I'm going to clean all this up first, but I'm going to give you a nice look here of what it looks like. Give you hope in case you want to work on your Xterra. And I've got new gaskets and everything for it. And where I put the screwdriver right here, I didn't do any damage, so I'm lucky there. But you can see where it snapped off there, the bolt did. So. But this happens a lot on vehicles, especially in the back where it's really hot. And here is this side. And you can see this side is fairly normal. Looks okay, just a lot of grease and dirt. And we'll clean this up later and start taking the valve covers off and pulling off the rest of the heads. So looks like we may be down to the nitty-gritty here, but just be aware if you get down to this intake, you may have trouble with this back bolt. And I think if I take one of these bolts here, you can see how easily they slide here. But on this one here, it's still got a little crud in it. I'm going to have to clean it out. But this one did break off, so that's the way it goes sometimes.